This episode is brought to you by the world's first reposado from Tequila Herradura, made with slow-cooked, hand-harvested agave sealed into oak barrels and aged 11 months before being enjoyed in your glass. Experience the world's first reposado, Tequila Herradura. Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Tequila Herradura. 40% alcohol by volume. Imported by Brown-Forman, Louisville, Kentucky. Herradura is a registered trademark. Copyright 2025 Brown-Forman Corporation.
Hey guys, it's Christian McCaffrey, pro running back. I'm partnering with Abercrombie this season to tell you about their viral denim. All you need to know is denim should fit like this. Abercrombie's athletic fit is a game changer. They're designed for guys with an athlete's build like mine. Just enough room and the perfect stretch. When a jean fits that well, I'm wearing it on repeat. Shop Abercrombie Denim in the app, online, and in store.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Encore une fois.
This is the inside story of Paris 2024. 1 year on, one more time.
Keely Hodgkinson is the queen of the middle distance. Could Josh Kerr become the king? So Jason Kelly, what do you prefer, watching or competing?
Oh, definitely competing, yeah. But this is second best, and I feel really lucky that I get to still come and experience it. This is my fifth games of actually being here, obviously 4 competing, first time working.
This is Encore, Fois, the inside Paris story from Anything But Footy, looking back at what we did, where we were, some of our favourite stories, slightly self-indulgent, but 1 year on. It is an audio record of what we've done, an archive. It was the first time it ever been broadcast commercial rights on a commercial radio station in the UK. We were absolutely delighted to be part of the Talk Sport team. So, day 11. Tuesday, August 6th. We're in a week's time. It'll all be over. We'd all be home by this point. So we're on the downward slide now. That's a bit sad. It's because there's so much more to come. But in that second week, you do begin to feel like you've been there nearly 2 weeks by that point, and it is hard going. But you're in a routine. But you can also feel that the end is in sight. You're coming to that finish line, and so I think you get an extra boost. After a long nap, which maybe came the next day for Michael, but you are kind of beginning to think, oh, we're not that far from the end. But I continued my journeys around Paris with a brand new venue. I took another train and another bus out of the city centre, but an amazing location. It was a park there. There were bars. There was food all around it, and that was
any sport.
And that was the velodrome. But,
right.
But the reason why I mentioned this, no, you're right. There was no sport because I got there 6 hours early before the first race because we talked about how busy we were, and I was doing updates for Talk Sport, and I think I said to you today there isn't really anything in the daytime, so I'm just going to go and do my updates from the velodrome, just get myself there. But literally, I got there 6 hours before the first race. I was sitting in the media centre on my own, and someone actually walked up to me on the security guards and was like, should you be here at this time? And I was like, no, here's my contact. He was like, oh yeah, it's fine. I think I was there before the media centre actually had opened. But we were there, and 4 hours later, they were still putting down some of the branding. It was the second day of the velodrome. Paris 2024 and Olympic rings were literally being put down on the track to make sure that the right branding was there as they crossed the line. But you were at Team GB House again that morning.
Yeah, I just remember the velodrome in Rio. We went and had a little recce there before, and they were like taping the track together, weren't they?
But they were still doing things the second day. They'd obviously looked at the pictures from the gold medal that we talked about in the last episode, and we're like, well, where's the branding? And they were putting it down that day.
So I went to see Katie Marchant, who we mentioned, the women's team sprint gold medalist. She was the only one of the team that came, because I think the others were all still in other competitions. So I went to see her at Team GB House, which was nice because going back to obviously my Yorkshire radio days, Katie's from Leeds. So again, an athlete spoken to a lot. And talking of the Leeds connections, obviously the mixed team triathletes were there as well. So, great to catch up with Georgia Taylor Brown.
You were just chatting with your mates.
Yeah, basically, I was literally just went really to get some photographs with people I knew for social media. I did record some interviews which went out on the TalkSport 2 breakfast show. It was important as well. The other reason I was there, as well as getting another picture with her, was obviously we had Keely Hodgkinson live on the breakfast show on TalkSport speaking to Jeff Stelling back in London. So I had to just go obviously and make sure that happened as well.
Well done.
Obviously,
well done.
It did. And then, Keely said we must have a picture together again. And I bumped into Sam Queck. She was there, old friend of ours from Rio 2016. And I had that conversation we always have with her about how in Rio we dragged her off to the bins because at that point we weren't rights holders to the Olympics. So we weren't allowed to record audio and interviews in the venues. We had to drag her outside to where the refuse was collected. The story that we have every time I see her, but I'm not actually convinced she really remembers it.
No.
But anyway. And so, it was quite a busy morning for me at Team GB House. And it was a day, actually, I made 2 people cry. So if you listen to yesterday's episode, we talked about the fact that people crying became one of the features of our interviews, for better or worse. And on this day, I had 2 sets of tears. I had some upset tears, which we'll talk about later. And I had what she described as happy tears with Andrea Spendolini-Sirex, who was in her individual event. So was Lois Tolson. Remember, they'd won the medal together. Yep. But I was actually lucky because I'd been kicked out of the centre, the aquatic centre that day. I'd followed the exact same path, gone to the exact same place where previously I'd sat and done commentary on Tom Daley and Noah Williams, and was removed from the venue, brilliantly captured by shooting press attaché Craig Davis, who was at the diving that day, and captured it all on photographs and video as I was removed mid-commentary from the venue. And then I went to the media centre to pick up watching and then they kicked me out of there.
Which was ridiculous because I spent a whole afternoon broadcasting from there.
So I ended up broadcasting on one of those concrete security blocks that they put in front of venues to stop potential sort of attacks or whatever on the venue, essentially watching what was happening at the diving on like a text system called My Info, which journalists are provided. So if you think back to sort of teletext CFAX days, that was essentially how I ended up commentating on Andrea Spendolini-Sirex and Lois Tolson that day. They let me back in the building to do an interview. Andrea obviously didn't win a medal in the individual. Some people thought she might. And she was just very super emotional and she was sobbing her heart out, but she just kept telling me that they were happy tears because she was just, she was leaving the games with a bronze medal. And she was there at the games again. And she just kept saying to me, happy tears, the happy tears. But she was very, very tearful.
So I had quite a moment in the velodrome when the action actually began, as I say, about 5 or 6 hours after I'd got there, where I was sitting. It was great. You had a mixed zone, which was very well organised, and you could book your place. And I booked my place, and I think I was number 19, a bit like yours, well down the pecking order. But I was there. I had my own little slot. I could sit. And of course, we always say how hot the velodromes are. And even though you know it, you still can't prepare for the amount of heat that is in that velodrome when you're working on a MacBook and with equipment. And it's just absolutely incredible. So I was sitting there typing away, doing my reports. I can remember doing some reports into the drive with Andy Goldstein on TalkSport and Darren Bent when suddenly all the lights went out because they were building up to the next big race and various other things. So it's quite cool to be right in the middle and broadcasting from there. But at one point I was typing away and I suddenly looked up and I was like, I recognise you. I was about to go up to this lady and say, hey, how are you doing? And then I actually fortunately stopped myself because it was Dame Laura Kenny. I looked up and I thought, I really know who you are. You're like a personal friend. And then I was like, oh no, she's working for the BBC, and she, she did a great job in her first BBC from what I saw. But she was, and literally walking right past me, and I'm so glad I didn't say anything because it would have been total embarrassment.
You've actually got a photo of you and her from Glasgow 2014 in your
Office,
room, in
yeah,
your office at home, which
I
I
know.
think I probably took, didn't I?
Yeah, I think you did. It's
Um,
one of my favourite moments, where she told me all about how she'd eaten porridge and to win the gold medal, and that had inspired her. But yeah, Scottish oats probably in those days. But that was my moment in Velodrome. But the other thing to say, and the Kennys continue, despite the fact that she wasn't competing and nor was Jason. I got my interview with Jason Kenny, who is the hardest man to get an interview with. Generally, even when he was winning gold medals left, right, and centre, and trying to get words from him. I think we did an interview with him before he went to Tokyo. And it was the best interview we ever had with him. It was a Zoom call, and he was so chilled and so relaxed
he was in
going
his
into those
hotel room,
games.
wasn't he?
Yeah, and
I remember.
it was a brilliant interview, and I really enjoyed that. And it was just before the games. Anyway, I got my interview with him because he was now the coach of the men's team sprint. And Jack Carlin, Hamish Turnbull, and Ed Lowe all won the silver medal. They were smashed by the Netherlands, being brutally honest. And when the Netherlands walk past you, the biceps and the thigh muscles, oh my goodness, they were absolutely huge, and they deserved to win it. But we got the silver medal. We were ahead of Australia, which was always a good thing in my mind. But then I got that interview with Jason Kenny, and it was a bit like what you said about the Noel Lyles interview. It was job done. I felt that I could send that to TalkSport and they'd know who it was. They'd know that Jason Kelly is up there with Great Britain's greatest Olympians with the amount of medals that he's won. And I also got to speak to Jack Carlin as well. So it was a really good night at the Velodrome. I'm just glad I didn't put my foot in it with either Jason or Laura.
Yeah, and I think from a talk sport point of view, bearing in mind the radio station were doing the games for the first time, just to be able to, so going back a few days when I was at the triathlon, just to get the insight from Alistair Brownlee that I did in between Beth Potter and Alex Yee's medals. Alistair Brownlee, again, as you say there, an athlete that the audience would know, will have heard of automatically, instantly. It would be that recognition. And again, having Sir Jason Kenny on as well. So just being able to add to those names to our proper lineup, the Dailies and the Kelly Holmeses and all the others that we had across all the different sports, I think was just really added a little bit of insight into the coverage, and probably what made the coverage stand out so well and be so well received. So I was obviously back to athletics in the evening. It started with another catch up with Keely Hodgkinson, because obviously she got a medal.
Did she ask for another selfie with you?
Another picture. So she got a medal that night, and so that was the interview where I said to her, "You're going to get a trip to the Palace and become Sports Personality of the Year," both of which things subsequently happened. She got awarded the MBE and became Sports
Mystic
Personality.
Michael.
And she said to me, "I was calling it early," but I actually don't think it was a massive leap of faith, to be honest with you, that those things were going to happen. So Keely was there. It was the night, obviously, of the men's 1500 meters final. So Cole Hocker, and we were all talking about, Josh Kerr against Jakob Ingebrigtsen. That was, even the stadium announcer introduced it as, this is it. It's the showdown. It's the head-to-head, Josh Kerr against Jakob Ingebrigtsen. And then Ingebrigtsen ended up finishing fourth, didn't he? I think Josh Kerr was just run out of it. I think they were so busy looking at where each other were and racing each other that Cole Hocker was able to.
Could he come in the inside?
Yeah.
Hocker? Yeah. So he came the shortest way.
Josh Kerr, I think, moved outside to block the run of Ingebrigtsen, and that allowed Cole Hocker to come the shortest way around and take the goal. And, I interviewed all three, I think, afterwards. Josh said, and he was quite honest, like, you ask anyone in that race, we knew that it was more than just a Kerr against Ingebrigtsen battle. We knew that every man on that start line could have won that race. And what was great about, and you spoke in a previous episode about interviewing some of the Americans, was obviously Cole Hocker stopped, did a lovely interview, one of many, and just was very eloquent in being able to say how important the results were for America in the track and field with LA. And because he was just so aware that he's a non-entity and irrelevance in American sport, really, which is outrageous when you think he's an Olympic gold medalist in the 1,500 meters, which is an event that in this country we love so much. And all our 1,500 meters from Cramco, Yvette, and all the others are all just so instantly recognizable, and they all trip off the tongue to us, to the Jake Whiteman, Josh Kerr days now. And yet Cole Hocker could probably walk down his home street and very few people would bother him. So he gave this lovely interview about what it would mean for America. But I also mentioned I'd made 2 people cry that day. Happy tears from Andrea Spendolini-Syriac. They were more upset tears from Lena Nielsen. So if you'd been listening to previous episodes, you'd know that we had recorded a lovely piece with Lena about her MS diagnosis, but nothing to do with that. She just, the old lactic got to her in her semi-final of the 400 hurdles. She looked like she was going to qualify for the final. She hit the final hurdle, and she came and afterwards, so she obviously didn't qualify. She did finish, but she was way down. And she came afterwards with Jessie Knight, actually. And Jessie, I think, knew that was probably the end for her, and she was going to go back to teaching. So she was happy she'd finished her career, especially because she'd had a terrible Tokyo with different things. She finished her career with an Olympic semi-final. And that's fantastic for someone that combined teaching and track and field. Lena, I think, knew as she approached that final hurdle, should have been in the final. And she went and she did a few interviews, and then obviously she was coming up the ramp past a lot of the other interview positions. And as I mentioned previously, I was at the kind of the top of some stairs, and she just slumped on these stairs and she was just crying her eyes out. She was just sobbing uncontrollably, and I could just see her shoulders going. And and eventually took quite some time. She turned and she came up the 3 or 4 steps. And it's one of the few times
Do you think she'd got to the end? She thought she'd got to the end of the media zone, which is why she sat down.
Yeah, I think she did. I think she thought she'd done all that.
Yeah.
And then
she saw you.
And then she came up 3 steps and saw me
with your microphone.
With my microphone, and she was still crying. And it's one of the few times actually I've said to an athlete, look, if you don't want to do this, I'm not going to make you do it. And that's not me being a hard journalist, is it? Because actually my job was to get that reaction. And in that moment, that was the British Olympic story. I just felt so sorry for her. And she just was someone I got to know quite well. And I said to her, probably knowing that she would say, no, it's fine, she'd do the interview. But I did give her the get out. I did give her the option. I said, look, if you really don't feel up to this, I'm not going, and I think you never can force someone, but I'm not going to insist on it. I'm not going to get aggressive and say, you have to talk to me. And she was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. And yeah, we recorded an interview. She tried to put things into context a bit. Bear in mind that not that long ago, a few years previously, she'd had to teach herself how to walk again. I mean, when you put that perspective on things, hitting a hurdle at the Olympics is not the be all and end all. But yeah, it was, I don't know, going back to that WhatsApp group that we had between all the reporters on the ground in Paris. It was one of those tougher ones to do.
Very quickly, because I'm going to run up through the rest of the headlines, but just on Josh Kerr, do you think, because everyone says, oh, we can come back in 4 years' time, he'll be 31 by then, it's LA. Do you think it was his moment? I don't want to say it was his moment, but was it his moment to be Olympic champion?
I hope not.
It's a long time. 4 years is a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And there'll be a few athletes. We'll talk in tomorrow's episode about Matt Hudson-Smith, and again, very, very similar story. I think there'll be a few athletes that maybe think that could have been the moment. But on the day, Cole Hocker ran the best race, ran it tactically better than anyone else, and won the gold medal.
And arguably, we could have also, you mentioned Matt Hudson-Smith, which we'll talk about in the next episode, but we could have had Keely gold, Josh gold, Matt Hudson-Smith gold, 3 days in a row. That would have been unbelievable from a British athletics point of view, wouldn't it?
It would have been, and it really, really would have captured the public imagination at home, but it's been a theme, hasn't it, that the gold medals were just that little bit harder to come by at Paris 2024 for Team GB.
Some of the other headlines: Laura Muir and Georgia Bell started their 1,500 metre campaign in the morning. Why do we mention that? Because obviously there was still stuff to come later on in the week. It was the skateboarding park final for the women. I should say girls here, because these kids are so young and so impressive. But Sky Brown actually hurt her shoulder while she was in the prelims and finished fourth in the prelims, but came through to grab her bronze with her tricks and flicks and fun in the sun, and she got her bronze, which she so desperately wanted, having done it in Tokyo, and did the same in Paris despite that injury. It was 14-year-old Arisa True of Australia who won it. Just with Brisbane on the horizon, the Australians were having a good games, and something for us to bear in mind as we were continuing that second week. Lewis Richardson lost his semi-final to Mexican Alvarez in the boxing, so it was a bronze medal for him. That was secured. He'd got it. He would get that presentation in a couple of days' time. And down in Marseille, we talked about it briefly. It was hard to cover the sailing because it was so far away. But in the men's dinghy, Mickey Beckett, who we hoped would maybe scrape to a medal, he finished in fourth place. And as Michael might have mentioned, the worst place to finish in the Olympics, not according to Daley Thompson, who, of course, as we know, finished fourth there in Seoul in '88. But for Mickey, he was a commentator 3 years previously in Tokyo, and just so unfortunate they couldn't get that medal in the men's dinghy.
This is Encore and Fois, the inside Paris story from Anything But Footy. 1 year on, one more time.
Encore une fois,
Paris 2024, one more time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.